The house had fallen into a silence that felt heavier than stone. After the father's sudden death, every corner of the home seemed to echo with memories that could no longer be relived. The dining table had an empty chair, the evenings had an empty voice, and the nights stretched endlessly with no comfort to hold on to. The children tried to remain strong, but grief lingered in their eyes. For the mother, however, the loss was not just of a husband, but of her partner, her companion, her anchor. She would sit by the window for hours, staring at the fading sky, clutching memories that now burned instead of soothing. Days turned into weeks, yet the weight of absence refused to lessen. Loneliness crept in like an uninvited guest, following her from room to room. She replayed old moments, his laughter, his words, the warmth of his hand, and every recollection only reminded her of what she would never have again. Sleepless nights became routine. She often found herself reaching across the bed, forgetting for a moment that no one was there. It was during this fragile time that an old family friend began to visit more often. He had been close to her husband, someone who had shared countless meals and memories with them. At first, his presence felt natural. He came to check on the children, to offer help with errands, to sit in the quiet and talk when words felt impossible. Slowly, those conversations grew longer. He listened when she cried, he reminded her of happier days, and sometimes, he even made her smile. The children didn't think much of it. To them, it was just another familiar face offering comfort in a time of loss. But for the mother, something was shifting deep inside. His company didn't erase her grief, but it made the nights a little less hollow, the silence a little less suffocating. Where there had been only sorrow, there was now a flicker of warmth, small, fragile, and unspoken. Yet beneath it all lay the shadow of the man they both had lost. Every laugh shared carried an echo of guilt, every glance exchanged carried an unasked question. Still, she let him stay. Because even though nothing could bring her husband back, this friend was the only person who seemed to understand the depth of her loss. Answer. The quiet evenings slowly became filled with conversation, with company, and with a closeness neither of them had expected. Nights began to change. What once had been hours of unbearable silence slowly turned into evenings filled with whispered conversations and gentle laughter. She and the family friend would sit together, sometimes over tea, sometimes with nothing more than the hum of the ceiling fan above them. At first, it felt innocent, two people bound by the same grief, leaning on each other when no one else could understand. But grief has a strange way of twisting into something else. What began as comfort started to feel like something more. Her eyes lingered longer on him than she intended. His voice, once just a reminder of old times, began to sound like reassurance she craved. When their hands brushed by accident, neither of them pulled away immediately. There was a pause, an unspoken acknowledgement, and then a silence that carried more meaning than words. She felt the weight of her husband's memory pressing on her heart, but at the same time, she couldn't deny the spark that was beginning to grow. He, too, wrestled with the same inner conflict. She could see it in the way he sometimes avoided her gaze, or in the hesitation before he spoke. He was supposed to be her late husband's friend, someone who had promised to look after the family, not someone who would slip into the role of forbidden comfort. Yet, night after night, he returned, as though drawn to her by an invisible force neither could resist. Their bond deepened. They laughed about little things, reminisced about the man they both had lost, and in between the memories, they created moments that belonged only to them. A hand resting too long on hers, a sigh that carried longing, a glance that betrayed desire. The air between them thickened with unspoken feelings, and the line between friendship and something more began to blur. The mother tried to silence the voice inside her. She told herself it was only loneliness, that it meant nothing, that she was just human and needed someone to lean on. But deep down, she knew it was more. Every time his presence filled the house, she felt alive again, in a way that frightened her. Every moment he left, she waited impatiently for his return. One evening, as rain tapped against the windows and thunder rolled faintly in the distance, their closeness reached a point they could no longer pretend to ignore. A hug meant to comfort lingered too long, her cheek brushed against his, and in that fragile, dangerous pause, their lips found each other. It was soft, hesitant, and trembling with both desire and guilt. They pulled apart quickly, eyes wide, breaths uneven, both aware of what they had just done. Neither spoke of it, yet neither could erase it. That single act had crossed a boundary, and though fear tightened around their hearts, the taste of that forbidden moment lingered, pulling them deeper into a secret they could no longer deny. The kiss had changed everything. What once could be dismissed as harmless companionship now carried the weight of a dangerous secret. Every time she looked at her children, guilt struck her like a blade. Their innocent eyes reminded her of their father, of the man whose memory she had betrayed. She told herself it had been a mistake, a moment of weakness, but her heart betrayed her. The warmth of that embrace lingered, calling her back to it again and again. The friend was no different. He tried to maintain distance, avoiding the house for days at a time, yet he always returned. Each visit became heavier with unspoken tension. They no longer needed words to reveal what was in their hearts. Every stolen glance, every accidental touch screamed of a desire they could not control. What had begun as grief shared now felt like an affair carried in silence. At night, she lay awake, torn between love and betrayal. The memory of her husband's voice haunted her, promises they had made, vows they had kept. And now, here she was, unable to resist the comfort of another man, his friend, no less. The shame was unbearable, yet the loneliness was stronger. Her body craved closeness, her heart craved companionship, and her soul wrestled with the morality of it all. They tried to keep their meetings discreet. Conversations were hushed, touches were brief, and their longing was hidden behind closed doors. Yet the fear of discovery was constant. A neighbor's curious glance, a child's unexpected question, even the sound of footsteps in the hallway filled her with panic. The secrecy made their connection more dangerous, more intoxicating, but also more fragile. He struggled too. He confessed once, his voice low and trembling, that he felt like he was betraying his best friend's memory. She listened in silence, unable to deny the truth in his words, but neither of them had the strength to end it. The heart had already made its choice, and reason was powerless against it. The weight grew heavier with every passing day. The guilt seeped into the simplest of moments, pouring tea, folding clothes, looking at her husband's photograph on the wall. She felt as though the walls themselves knew her secret, watching silently as her heart strayed. One evening, her youngest child asked why the family friend came so often. It was an innocent question, but it pierced her heart like a dagger. She stammered through an answer about kindness and support, but inside, fear gripped her. What if others began to notice? What if whispers spread? What if her secret was revealed? The love she had found in the shadow of grief was no longer a comfort but a torment. Every embrace carried sweetness and poison, every meeting left her both fulfilled and broken. She was caught between two worlds, the memory of the man she had lost and the forbidden bond she could not let go of. And with each passing day, the risk of exposure drew closer, like a storm gathering on the horizon. Rumors have a way of spreading faster than truth. Whispers began in the neighborhood, subtle at first, carried by curious eyes and hushed voices. The family friend's frequent visits had not gone unnoticed. What others saw as simple concern was slowly being twisted into suspicion. For the mother, every knock at the door, every passing glance from a neighbor, felt like judgment pressing down upon her. At home, the walls grew tighter. The children, though innocent, began to sense the tension. Their questions grew sharper. Why was he always here? Why did their mother smile differently when he was around? Why did silence fall so quickly whenever footsteps approached? She tried to brush it off, but the unease inside her only deepened. The guilt she had carried in private was now threatening to break into the open. One evening, it all became too much. A storm raged outside, rain battering against the windows as she sat with him in the dimly lit room. The closeness that once felt comforting now felt suffocating. Tears filled her eyes as she confessed the torment gnawing at her soul. "I feel like I've betrayed him," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I don't know if this is love, or just my loneliness playing cruel tricks on me." He listened in silence, his own expression heavy with sorrow. He admitted that he too carried the same guilt, the same sense of betrayal. What had begun as an attempt to protect her from grief had turned into something neither of them had planned, something that now threatened to destroy not only their peace but their honor. The storm outside echoed the turmoil within. They sat for a long time, facing the truth neither of them wanted to speak aloud. Finally, he reached for her hand, held it for a moment, and then let go. His eyes carried both tenderness and finality. "We can't do this anymore," he said softly. "Your heart belongs to him, even now. And mine must honor that." Her tears fell freely, but she nodded. She knew he was right. No matter how strong the bond they had formed, it was built on a wound, not a foundation. To continue would only deepen the scar. Their connection had been real, too real, but it had no place in the light of day. The next morning, the house was quiet again. He stopped visiting as often, keeping his distance with polite excuses. The children noticed, but no questions were asked. Life moved forward, though the void remained. At night, she would sit by the window once more, staring at the same sky she had stared at months before, only now with a heart that carried both comfort and regret. And yet, in her silence, she carried a secret truth. For a brief moment, she had felt alive again, even if it came at the cost of guilt and shame. It was a chapter that could never be spoken, a bond that could never be acknowledged. The story did not end in love, nor in scandal, but in quiet surrender. Two hearts had shared one loss, and in that loss, they had found each other, only to realize that some wounds are not meant to be healed this way. Two hearts, one loss, and a silence that would never be broken.